All right, I am back here on the podcast talking New York Rangers hockey with the guy who covers them for The Athletic, Rick Carpiniello. Rick, welcome to the show today. How are you?
I'm great, Mike. How are you?
Doing very good. And I have to ask, obviously, you've been around the team again. They've been practicing in Westchester. What's it like covering this team in the COVID-19 experience?
Yeah, it's so weird. I mean, it's so completely different. As is everything in this world. The last 4 months, 5 months. It's surreal. You go to the rink and you get your temperature taken and you wear your mask and you distance 6 feet behind the glass from the other reporters and you don't have any contact at all with the players or the coaches. We're normally in the locker rooms and talking to the guys, and we have no contact at all except for Zooms at the end of the day. And it's surreal, but I think it's going to get even more unusual, obviously, when they get to Toronto and they go inside what they call the bubble and there's safe zones and just live there. 12 NHL teams are going to live in Toronto for as long as they're playing, and it's really mind-boggling. But you hope they can pull it off. I'm not sure that they can, um, but if they do, it'll be quite an undertaking.
Yeah, it definitely seems that way for all these sports, but obviously, like they're trying to get back in. The Rangers got invited back, and you tell me a little bit about like what the mentality with them was right about when the season shut down. I know they were making a playoff push, but it looked like they were going to run out of gas at that point.
Yeah, they were making a push. They had a little bit of a slump when Chris Kreider got hurt, and they didn't defend as well for just a couple of games there as they had been. But they were convinced to a man that they were going to make the playoffs, and it was going to be a tall order. They were going to have to. They had 12 games left. They were going to probably have to win like 8 of them. It seemed anyway at that time. But I think this gives them new life. They were convinced they were going to make it, but I think this gives them a completely new life because now it's a best of 5 against a team that they've played very well against over the years, and and a completely fresh start for a team that's very, very young, very enthusiastic, and probably doesn't know better than to be afraid of these playoffs.
Yeah, that's for sure. And right now, the big question they have going into this thing is who's going to start in goal. And from what I've been reading, what your coverage of the Athletic is, sounds like Igor Shesterkin is the leader in the clubhouse right now to do that. Do you think they would give any consideration to Henrik Lundqvist, given his playoff history and his success against Carolina? You think it's a Shesterkin's spot to lose?
Yeah, I think they did give Lundqvist a lot of consideration, but it was certainly Shesterkin's job to lose, and he has not lost it. He has, in fact, nailed it shut. I think in training camp so far, he's been really good in the scrimmages, and Henrik has been too. But Henrik was going to have to do a lot more, and Shesterkin was going to have to fall a little bit by the wayside for a change to be made. Shesterkin was their number one goalie when the season stopped, and he's going to be their number one goalie until he shows he can't do it in the playoffs. And it's the right thing to do too, because as John Davidson said last month, this this experience is something you can't buy for this young team. And Shesterkin's going to be their number one goalie for a long, long time. You want him to get these games. Now, granted, they're trying to win. They're trying to win the playoff series. They're trying to win the play-in series, rather. They're trying to win the Stanley Cup. All of it, which might be a little bit of a dream, but you still have an eye to the future, and the future is getting experience for Shesterkin and Kako and Fox and Lindgren and Shahidl. This is a great week for them when this thing starts August 1st, and it's the right thing to let Shesterkin get these games.
Yeah, he's definitely a big part of their future. But the one question I'm curious about is how Henrik Lundqvist views his role with the organization going forward, because he's made it clear he's a little frustrated with his role this year, how he's lost his spot basically to he's fallen behind Shesterkin and Georgiev in the depth chart.
Yeah.
He has 1 year left on his deal. Has he given any sense of like whether he would want to get bought out or if he wants to stick around for the last year of his contract?
I thought he would be okay with getting bought out if that's the way it goes, and then he can certainly sign somewhere else for a lot less money and play another year or two maybe. Um, but I'm not sure that can happen now with the salary cap being flat for a couple of years based on the lost revenue because of COVID. So I think that that's still up in the air. I'm sure that they will not put him through a three goalie season again. Nor does David Quinn need to go through a three goalie season again. And nobody should. But I think that I think he was headed for a buyout until the cap got flattened out by the lost games. So I'm not completely certain how that's going to happen. But I think Lundqvist would certainly rather be bought out than go through this again.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with him. I'm also curious about how Chris Kreider looks. Obviously, he got the broken foot right after he signed the contract extension. How has he looked coming back in the practices so far?
He's good. He's looked good. He says he's not in game shape. Nobody is, but he's an animal when it comes to the workouts and when it comes to conditioning. And if anybody's going to pull this off, it's him. The foot is completely healed, and he's at least he looks like he's ready to take the team, to pull it across the finish line, whatever that finish line is. He's that kind of guy, and he's really taking a leadership role on this team. His physical gifts are remarkable, and it's another thing now. He's got to prove that he's worth that contract because they signed him with the thought in mind that the salary cap was going to be going up and then up, and and now it's not. So I think there's a little more weight on his shoulders, and they're probably going to have to clean out somebody who's a valuable player to make his contract fit next year. But he's looked good. He's looked fine in terms of conditioning, and you wouldn't expect anything less. But I think it's going to be interesting too that nobody's going to be in 100% physical shape that they would be going into a season or that they would be going into a playoffs in other years.
Yeah, that's true. And you brought up somebody who had to live up to their contract. Artemi Panarin definitely lives up to his. We're recording on Tuesday the 21st. He just got announced as one of the 3 finalists for the Hart Trophy. Do you think he has a realistic shot to win the award now?
I would say he's a long shot. I thought that if the Rangers didn't make the playoffs, he wouldn't even be a top 3 because most MVPs are guys that make the playoffs. Unless they really do something sensational. But now that he's one of the top 3, and let's face it too, the vote is no longer. The vote happened months ago, so somebody in the NHL knows who won. So it's not like a contest anymore. But I would think McKinnon or Draisaitl is probably going to win it, and Artemi Panarin will probably finish 3rd. But to be a finalist on a team that really wasn't in the playoffs at the point when the season stopped, it's pretty remarkable for what he's done. And he's been great. He really has been everything you could have hoped for. But I wrote today. We did a roundtable today about the case for each guy and the case against each guy. And my case against Panarin is Zibanejad, who was, you could really argue that he's the better player and he's the more important player to the Rangers. And that's not a knock on Panarin. I just think Zibanejad's a more complete player and a more of a leader and more of a 200-foot player than Panarin is. And Panarin, and again, I'm not knocking him. He was fantastic this season. Probably the best free agent the Rangers have ever signed.
Yeah, I would agree with that right now. And obviously, you brought up Mike Zibanejad, who obviously has been contributing all phases of the game. He had the highlight of the year at the 5-goal game against the Capitals. Do you get the sense that he's somebody who they have in mind to be the captain next season?
I did. I thought it was going to be this season, so I don't know why it didn't happen. Unless maybe they don't want to put that on him yet, and maybe they want this young team to take another step before they decide who's going to be the leader for the next several years. Some guys don't handle it well. Some guys try to do too much once they get that C sewn on their sweater. So I think maybe that's why they didn't do it. But unless it's Kreider, and I don't think it will be, then it's Zibanejad. And I think that's a done deal. It's just a matter of when they do that.
Yeah, I think you're right there. I think you're right on with the Zibanejad thing. One other guy who's intrigued me in the lead up to the restart is Capo Caco, who admittedly struggled through the regular season, but I've been reading some of the stuff you've been talking about him, and sounds like he's re-energized playing now. He was playing on the Kreider Zibanejad line in the practices.
Yeah, that was just a temporary thing though, because Buchnevich was out with some kind of a minor injury. Buchnevich came back today, and Kako went right back to the third line. So that's that. but he's looked like he looks like he just got a breath of fresh air with that break. I think he's a kid who presses, who puts a lot of pressure on himself, and whose confidence lacked because he's 18, but he thinks he fits in. He thinks he should be fitting in with the guys who are 26 and 27, and that's not realistic, especially for a kid in a new country with a new language and a new culture, living with a new family, playing in a new league against much older men, and I didn't think he would struggle as much as he did, but he did, and he went through it, and I think it took him down mentally. It weighed on him. And I think the break did him a ton of good. It also gave him a little break physically because he had played a lot of hockey before his draft. And then he had played, 70 games of this season. Well, he didn't play all 70, but he played a 70-game season, which he'd never done before. So I think the break was really good for him, and he looks terrific in camp.
Yeah, that's good to hear. And the other thing I'm curious about is the defense pairings, and they basically were kind of mixing things up a little bit before the shutdown. Are they basically the same pairs where they have Trouba with Smith and so on down the line? Have they changed anything up in the restart?
Yeah, no, they've gone strictly with the same six, same four, same three pairs. A little trouble with the math there, and Smith on Trouba's left is to me is really questionable whether they can handle a shutdown role or whether they're going to let Fox and Lindgren, the two rookies, handle the shutdown role. I'm not sure how they're going to do it. I don't think Smith is an ideal fit there. And then Smith, listen, he was, in the 8 or 10 game, whatever it was, that they played after they traded Brady Shea, he was fine there. He didn't hurt them. And he's had a good season at forward, and he's a guy who, he tries really hard, and he's big and he's strong and he's got a little toughness. And I'm not knocking him that he shouldn't play, but I don't think Smith Trouba should be your number one pair facing Carolina's top line. So, I do question that, but I also don't have the answer of what's the best way to do it because I wouldn't break up Fox and Lindgren, and I don't think they want to break up Stahl and Tony DeAngelo. So they're gonna go with these six, and if they're all healthy, and if one of them isn't healthy, then Libor Hayek jumps in. But to me, it's not ideal.
Yeah, speaking of Adam Fox, were you surprised he got snubbed for the Calder?
Not really. I mean, he's another case of a guy who he probably wasn't going to ever win that thing over the kids over McCarr for sure and over Quinn Hughes. But he could have been third for sure. The kid in Chicago at the forward who was third, Kublik, I don't even know if I'm saying it correctly. He had a terrific season too. So I don't think Fox was ever going to win the Rookie of the Year, but he was absolutely a revelation, and he absolutely is going to be a star, I think, for the Rangers.
Yeah, besides him and Kako, who has really caught your eye at the training camp in terms of you think that they're just playing very well right now?
It's funny. Obviously Shesterkin too, and a few others, but the guy who really has caught my eye a little bit, and he's only going to play fourth line, is Julian Gauthier. And they got him late in the season or middle of the season in a trade, and he's a big, fast kid. And his speed has just jumped off the page at me during this training camp. He looks like a young Chris Kreider. He shoots it great. He's big. I just don't know what he's going to actually give them in terms of offense and what kind of opportunity he's going to have on the fourth line. But as far as somebody jumping off the page in training camp, it's him, in my opinion. Then there's Kako, of course. I've been keeping an eye on Keandre Miller, who's not eligible to play in the playoffs, but has just signed, and he's getting a lot of reps with the NHL players now, and he's getting a lot of coaching and teaching from the staff, and from his new teammates. And he's pretty cool to watch. The guy's 6'5" and motors. Uh, they've got some kids in camp that are opening eyes. And then of course Fox has been really good, and um, you can go down the line with Zibanejad and Panera, of course, have been really good too, and you expect that Bushnevich. But then again, these are scrimmages and practices, so we don't normally put a lot of emphasis on those, especially even when we get to exhibition games. Say let's see what they do when the real stuff starts, when people start beating you up a little bit, when it gets a little anger in the game too. So we don't put too much stock in it. But to go back to your original question, Gauthier is the guy who's really caught my attention.
Yeah, and obviously they're heading up to Toronto this week to get ready for the restart. And I know that they've said that they want to get the young guys all this playoff experience. Like, do you think this is going to be really important experience for them, because it's not a traditional playoff setting where they're going on the road playing tough environments? They're basically playing in an empty arena with like piped-in crowd noise, possibly. So I think the fact that it's just these cup games is going to be the same kind of playoff experience for them as opposed to a regular year.
Yeah, it certainly won't be the same. That's for sure. You won't be going into a tough building the first two games. Like Carolina, it could have been really loud and boisterous for the first two games, and that could have been tough on kids for sure. This will be a little more of a much more even playing field, and it will not be the full Stanley Cup experience. That's for sure. That said, once they get going and once the games begin and you advance, if you advance, they're going to see a difference between playoff games and regular season games, because there's no question there's a difference.
Yeah, that's true. And my last question is, obviously, you mentioned the flat cap before. They have two big decisions to make the offseason with what to do with Ryan Strome and Tony DeAngelo. Do you think the flat cap's going to influence their ability to keep either guy?
Yes, I think I've written and I imagine that they're going to have to choose and trade one of them, because they're restricted, so they can be traded. Trade one and find the other. And I think they're probably leaning toward DeAngelo. They'll miss Strome. They don't have a number 2 center ready yet. And if they trade Strome, then it's probably going to have to be Philip Hedl, who's the number 2 center next year. Strome played second line center with Panarin, and they played really well together. It's not going to be an easy decision either way, but I can't imagine they can keep both.
All right, Rick, thanks for all the time. I really appreciate it. Before I let you go, how can people keep up with what you're writing on The Athletic and follow you on social media?
Well, I'm at Rick Carpiniello. That's my Twitter handle. And theathletic.com, you can get the app, or you can, it's a subscription site. And I think they're offering some kind of 40% special or something right now as we get started here. So it's a great site. I mean, and I'm not just talking about my stuff, because I'm certainly not. But if you're a hockey fan, we cover all the teams, wall to wall. So it's a great place for hockey fans and for all sports fans. I think it's a really unique place. But anyway, thanks for letting me push it.
No problem. I'm an Athletic subscriber, and I read all of your stuff. I check out all of these sites, all the writers. Incredible, great content being put out there. Rick, thanks for all the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks for having me.
All right, and there you have it. That was Rick Carpiniello talking New York Rangers hockey. Up next, we'll take a deeper dive into the Blue Shirts. We'll go into the Rangers fan forum right after this.